Welcome to the Value Telling Podcast, where we talk to some amazing people about all aspects of their persuasive process and decision winning. We cover off what value telling content really is and why it plays an essential role in winning decisions, like securing that dream job, getting that buy-in from that hard to please client, winning a place on that PSL after a tough tender process, and so much more. At the heart of the podcast is celebrating all the great things people do to understand and deliver a high persuasive performance and what it really means. I'm Matt Trainer, and I'm delighted to spend a few moments with some amazing people. I'm not a guru, but I'm an experienced business leader, and I've worked in, led and advised hundreds of companies and thousands of people over the last 20 years. I've picked up a thing or two along the way. I've seen the good, the bad and the ugly, and I'm ready to share. If you value some thought-provoking culture, insightful science, inspirational snippets on all things decision winning, you're in the right place.
And I know that you and I have spoken before that there's so many great opportunities out there. There's loads of great things that are going on in your business, outside your business, that's happening with your client. And my experience is that sometimes people really struggle to recognize the value in it, but then capture it and maximize it. I wonder if you could just recall the story when we first started talking. I think you were running quite a sizable manufacturing business. You had quite a significant bid to put together, and you were working quite hard to orchestrate all of the evidence and proof and answers. So I know the scenario of trying to get your hands on the good stuff that goes on in your business has been a real challenge for you in the past. I just wonder if you could reiterate that story for our listeners, please.
Yeah, I mean, when you're working in a big organization, you tend to sort of to forget these sort of things. And, suddenly someone will mention, we need a case study. And then you're sort of going back to someone and you're trying to do everything retrospectively. And, what I was trying to encourage the people in the business to do was actually, let's tell a customer in advance that we'd like to use them as a case study because we think this is going to be a really good project to work on. So I think that story you're talking about is, when we were going after sort of new clients, and it was a long period of time. It would take us 2 years to develop a client. And then if they asked for any of that evidence, we just wouldn't have it, or we'd struggle around and think, what about that project we did for somebody else? Maybe we can go and get something. And you might be asking them to recount something that's 2 years old. So we were always looking for, what I encouraged was to look for those opportunities up front. Say, okay, we're going to start engaging with this prospective customer now. Let's sort of track the steps we're going through and actually say, by the way, you'd be a fantastic client for us. So, we'd like to do a case study. We want to start recording the process now of all the stages we're going through, because one of the things I talk about is marketing is the sale before the sale. And when you're in a bigger organization, it's harder to control all the communication that's going out there. And some people say to me, well, I don't do much marketing, and they think that's advertising. And I say, well, do you have a customer service department who send emails? The tone of that email could be really damaging if it's not written correctly. So, you're going to go through as a business various stages of a process, and you're going to have people interacting at all different levels. And you've got to make sure that all of those interactions are positive, and any feedback that you get along the way, you need to be collecting that and collating that so that you can turn that into a story you can use next time. And again, it comes back to that overcoming objections. A new person comes along, why should I deal with you? Well, here's an example of a new client that we took 2 years to develop, and here's all the steps we went through, and this was the feedback we got along the way. And, and you're more likely to get that positive outcome.
Absolutely. Really powerful stuff. Thanks for that insight. And can you recall a time when you had a kind of a penny drop moment when you realized that there was a persuasive process, perhaps in your much younger years, where you realized that actually I've got to push prospect clients through almost like a funnel and orchestrate and develop this relationship? Can you think of a time back then when that moment happened?
Yeah, I can. I can think of a great example, and I've used this one several times. Quite early in my sales career, I used to work in the rapid prototyping industry, and it was a bureau service. And so, we had to, we were getting orders and then fulfilling them in about 3 or 4 days. So we were always having to fill the pipeline. And, I had a really focused target market. And I was working for a company that specialized in one of the newer technologies in the prototyping industry. And it was all about persuading our clients and potential customers to use this process, because ultimately they got something where they could do more functional tests. So it wasn't just the usual form and fit testing. And I had a prospective customer who I knew would benefit from this service, but they always favored the traditional techniques and already had an existing supplier. So I was trying to persuade them of something new. And I remember explaining to the guy every time I rang him up, I said, look, the reason why I keep ringing you is because I know there's a benefit to what I have. And this is where CRM systems are also very, very powerful, because I'd have a conversation with a guy and then say, well, okay, look, I'm going to ring you again in about 4 weeks' time. Yeah, that's fine, Paul. Ring. So I'd log it in there. I'd get the alert, ringing for, and I just kept on having the conversation. And all of a sudden, it opened up an opportunity where I was able to offer him an irresistible offer to try a product. They were going to do some specific testing that I knew that our prototype would stand up to. And so said, look, if it fails, I won't ask you to pay for the product. And to cut a long story short, they tried it, they got all the test results they wanted, and from that point on, he became one of my biggest clients. And I always coined a phrase from that, persistence without annoyance. I was persistent with that guy because I knew I was going to be able to help him. And I just needed to persuade him and for him to understand the value of what I was actually going to offer him. And that's a story that I recount quite a few times. It's one of my favorites.
And where does that confidence come from? Where was that, I know what I've got here is going to add some value? Where did that moment come from?
That's a great question, Matt. And I think it comes from, I've always said, whenever I've gone to work for a specific business, I've always said I have to have absolute confidence in a sales role in the business and the product. And it was really just from, really learning and getting the experience internally that actually what we were doing did have benefit, and and seeing the results that other customers were getting. And another great story for that same company was that Black & Decker were prototyping a lawnmower, and they actually used our prototype to actually build a lawnmower and go and cut grass. And I remember, this comes back to the social proof. It's a lovely story. I remember having a conversation with my engineer. And he said, I said, oh, whatever happened to that lawnmower that you took out and tested on the grass? He said, oh, Paul, I'm not sure. He says, it'll be in a storeroom somewhere and it'll be all covered in mud and grass and all that. And I said, this is perfect for me. I said, any chance I could have it? He says, yeah, come on, we'll go and find it. And we went digging through this shed outside somewhere, and eventually found this, this prototype lawnmower that was covered in grass and mud and everything, but it proved it had worked. And he just let me have it because they'd done all the tests. So all the exhibitions and shows I used to do, we used to have this out on display and say, look, someone has actually cut the grass with this prototype. So it just comes from having that confidence of what you're doing. Again, it comes back to getting that feedback from your customers and getting the examples where they've had a great experience, which gives you more confidence, and then you're using them to help you persuade other people. So it goes full circle, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, doesn't it just? And that's interesting that such an amazing prototype has found itself in a dusty shed somewhere, and it's great that you've remembered that to maximize its value. On that note, can you look back and recall a moment where you think, in hindsight, I wish I'd have capitalized on that piece of evidence or that proof, and feel like there's a bit of a regret, or you've missed a trick? Have you got a story like that?
I can't think of a specific one, but I would say it's probably, when I look back over 30 years, more than 30 years in my career, many of which was spent as a salesperson, I would say that, if I really could look back in a great level of detail, I'm sure there'd be hundreds of examples. Because it's, as I said earlier, you're not always thinking about it. You're not always thinking about, there could be a great story here that I need to be capturing this so that I can tell it proactively, instead of you come up with a situation where a new prospect or client wants to say, well, who have you dealt with in the past? What have you done in the past that could be relevant? And then you're trying to pull that information together from, historical records. So I'm absolutely sure my career is probably littered with examples where I think I wish I'd collected more of them. And that's why I say to all of my clients, be constantly looking for those testimonials, that social proof. I personally made a buying decision very recently, and one of the things that persuaded me was, along with a proposal I was given, were 3 pages of quotes from people who'd been delighted with this service. And I thought, well, that's me persuaded now, because I can see real names of real people that have had a great outcome, and pages and three sides of this. I always say to my clients, get your social proof, high up there on the list. If you've got a website landing page or a home page, make sure there's 2 or 3 there. You get a lot of people who say, click on this link to go and read my reviews. That makes it hard for someone. Just put 1 or 2 quotes up there that they can see straight away. I don't need to go and check this out because it's right there in front of me. So the answer to your question is, can't think of any specific examples, but I will be absolutely sure. My career is probably littered with them along the way.
Yes, I think all of ours are, and whenever I've spoke to people about that, they can cast their mind back and think, it's pretty tough to try and keep your eye on that prize and try and be deliberate with capturing content, which is a term that really resonates with me. I see so many guys and girls out there that do great stuff, but are so serendipitous with their content, and it just waits for them to either hit them in the face, or a moment crops up, like you quite neatly said, that there's a bid or requirement and everyone's scratching around. So that really resonates with me.
There are lots of cool things happening in your company every day. As a leader, it's hard to keep track of the great things that happen, and remote work doesn't make it easier. Capturing and using this information, that we call value-telling content, is important, as it is needed to make a compelling bid, a sales pitch, deliver a performance review, and so much more. Blu-J can help supercharge your persuasive power by creating content that converts. Our platform works like a logbook that records the important stuff. Our powerful search makes it quick and easy to find what you need. Win more decisions with Blu-J. Book a call on our website and get a guided tour of what we do.